Everyone, welcome to this creative conversation. I am so jazzed for you to meet today's guest. I am joined today with Sean Lyden. He is the CEO of Lyden Communications, which trains entrepreneurs to become more persuasive communicators. And today, Sean and I are going to talk about something which is a pet peeve for both of us, which is poor cold outreach, how to be better at cold outreach, why it feels gross, what do we do about it? Sean, welcome.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate you having me here today.
So I want to start off by telling the audience something.
Sure.
This is the first time you and I have actually met sort of face to face, so to speak. We have been sort of circling around one another on LinkedIn for, I think, at least a year at this point. It could be longer.
I think so.
But this is an example, I just want to bring it up, of two people who don't know one another coming together to collaborate and build relationships over time, which I think is kind of the best possible scenario from quote unquote cold outreach.
I agree.
I posted something on LinkedIn a while ago bemoaning some cold outreach I got for someone who wanted to join Brave by Design as a guest. It was just a nightmare. And you responded to that. And let's just start with this.
Sure.
Why does cold outreach suck so much? What is everyone doing wrong?
Well, it's a number of things, but the biggest reason is that people lack empathy when they're crafting their cold outreach email. So they know that if people are trying to sell them at the get-go without building trust, they know that they'll back away. But they never think about the fact that if they're doing the same thing, that's what's causing their recipients, their audience, to back away or ghost them, not respond, and so forth. It's the key to it is having empathy. So if you're not starting there and not understanding why this person would want to respond to you, you're missing the key that's going to open up their heart and their mind to think about and consider what you have to say.
I love that. And I love that you talk about empathy first, and this idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes for a second and being like, would I respond to the message I just sent someone or I'm considering sending? Because I don't think most people think about it that way. I think I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah, and I don't either, except for the fact that what I learned as a journalist is that I would put myself into the mind of my audience, almost like, and I've never acted on any scale, but it's almost the way that an actor would in terms of putting themselves in the mindset of a character. So then what they say is authentic to that character because they're thinking the same thoughts, they're feeling the same feelings. And so before I would even craft an article, I put myself in the mindset, what's keeping this person, this CEO, this fleet manager, whoever I'm writing for, what's keeping them up at night? What are their concerns? What are the challenges that they're wrestling with? And I really try to put myself in that mindset. The same approach comes to a cold outreach because you look at the context here. So if it's cold, there's zero trust, whether it's because they don't know you, they don't know your company, they don't know your product. So at that stage, you got to look at, is my ask or my call to action appropriate for where that person is in what I call the trust continuum? If you think of a continuum being from 0, no trust, to 10 being impeccable trust, where there are raving fans for you.
Yeah.
If you're at 0, you got to approach that differently than if you're at a 5 or a 6 or a 7. And so often when you see, whether it's cold outreaches or advertisements or whatever the case might be, they're making these pitches as if you're on a 5, 6, or 7 and not at a 0. So
this is
go
interesting.
ahead.
Okay, so I love this idea. You call it a trust continuum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so 0, you said, I don't know you. 10, I'm your biggest fan. I'm raving. I'm screaming from the
Yep.
rooftops. How do we, if I'm starting at a 0, and let's assume that's where the cold outreach begins.
Yep.
What is the first thing you recommend people do to go from that 0 to maybe a 0.5
Sure.
or a 1? Or what is the most important thing we can offer to build trust?
Yeah. And so there are 2 levels. So what I would call a passive and an active, or an indirect or a direct. So on a passive, indirect would be what you and I do on LinkedIn as we're cultivating relationships. You're building affiliation. So that's one way of building trust, but you can't really control results. That's a long-term play. If you've got to, if you're recruiting a speaker for a conference, or you want to get in the door with a company to set up a demo or discovery meeting and so forth, then you got to take more of a direct approach. And so with that, I tailor, or recommend tailoring your call to action to be very simple and just ease them along. And that call to action is, hi, I'm hoping you can help point me in the right direction. I'm this is what my company does. Who would I speak with about whether your company would like a competitive bid on XYZ? Would that be you?
Yeah. Simple.
And it's simple. And all you're asking that person to do is to qualify themselves. They don't feel like you're trying to sell them. You're just trying to figure out who this contact person is.
Right.
And, when I was starting out, and I would be writing, say, for PR agencies to write for their clients. And so I would ask them, I'm hoping you can help point me in the right direction. Who would I speak with about whether or not your agency hires freelance writers on an as needed basis to support your in-house content team? Would that be you?
Yeah.
And so I'm not selling them. I'm not saying that I'm the best writer for them. I'm not doing anything. All I'm doing is seeing who this person would be. And I started developing that cold outreach approach back in the early 2000s when I was selling trucks, because instead of waiting for customers to come to the lot to buy trucks for me, most of the clients that I wanted to go after, they would never step foot on the dealership. So my job was to bring the dealership to them. So I'd sit in a Starbucks and fire off these emails to the people in the construction industry, people in the lawn care industry. Yes. And find out, hey, who would I speak with about offering a competitive bid on your trucks?
Yeah.
And they're always looking for ways that they can save money. So I've stimulated the curiosity, and that's how I would schedule appointments. So to be like, yeah, that would be me. And yeah, actually we're looking to cycle out 3-4 trucks over the next quarter. Awesome. Let's schedule a time to talk. And I would go out and I would assess their situation and so forth. But that's a way of taking it from zero trust, a very small ask to get in the door. And then I use the trust continuum as a framework, because I believe that every communication you initiate should move them along that trust continuum. To eventually, when they're at a 5, that's normally when they will ask for a quote from you.
Gotcha.
You take them to a 7 to get them to buy from you. And then you take them from an 8 to a 10 for them to be that loyal repeat client.
They're coming back. They're telling people they're part of, I call it a referral engine. They want to let everyone know you're the best.
You're precisely right.
With you. What I love about this, and it's interesting because I kind of talk about it. I use different language, but I talk about it as giving people incremental opportunities to raise their hand.
Yes.
And to say, yeah, I'm interested. Now, And as you and I know, not everyone is interested.
And
And
that's
that's
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be interested. And
Yes.
but I think one of the things that you and I have seen that I think drives us both crazy, or I'm going to speak for myself.
Sure.
Messages are not targeted. Messages are incredibly verbose. So
Yes.
I have to read a lot to even understand what this is about. And if it's not targeted towards me, the more that I'm reading, the more annoyed I'm getting at the
Totally get it.
process.
Yes.
Um, and I think that's where people think, oh, cold outreach is slimy, is gross. I'm scared of it, and I don't want to be that person. And what I hear Sean saying, and what I would concur with, is you don't have to be that person.
Exactly.
You can actually, if you're targeted, right? So like when you're doing your cold outreach, or we're doing
Yeah.
your cold outreach,
Yeah.
how did you said you weren't necessarily sure you were talking to the right person, but did you think you might be in the right ballpark? And
Yes.
did you understand their business?
Yeah, even if I knew it was the right person, I wanted them to tell me.
Okay. You wanted to
That's
hear,
what.
yes, that's me.
Correct. So when you're reaching out to CEOs, you don't ultimately know who's going to be in that process, because they may have their team set up where, hey, that's going to be the marketing director's call and so forth. But I know that if I'm in touch with the CEO, I'm going to be distributed to wherever I need to be distributed. So I know I'm talking to someone that can help me.
Yeah.
But I let the whole point of my cold outreach on that realm is just, as you talk about, get them to raise their hand. I call it permission to market. And when I'm tracking them, I track them as PTMs, my permission to market folks.
And is that in your CRM? Is that how you do that? Or is that just like you're writing that down?
That's super fancy. I use a Google Sheet,
Okay.
That's,
it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't
works.
have to be
it works for
complicated.
me. Yeah. So I use a Google Sheet, and, I'll link to things if I need to link specific documents I have associated with it. But yeah, those are my PTMs. And the PTMs are the ones that I'll periodically do reach outs, because if they've given me a permission to market, they're about a 2 on my trust continuum.
Okay.
So it could be, I'll spend time learning about their business, because I'm not wasting time on someone that isn't interested. So I'll take time to learn about their business. I may shoot them an article and say, hey, FYI, this may be of interest to you.
Offering value.
Correct. I'll do things that I don't necessarily expect a reply to. And there are times where I will come up with ideas for them. Like there's one person where they're putting together this short little 5-minute update of the trucking industry. And so what I did is, it's like, I had it transcribed for them, and then I sent an email to them, said,
wow,
look, here's some idea. I saw that you're putting together this great content, and here's some ideas if you ever wanted to make it, expand, repurpose that content in other ways. Here's what it would look like as an article. Here are some areas where you could, do little cuts on it and so forth. And I said,
you sent that to them.
Yeah. I said, feel free to use that as you see fit. It didn't take any more. It took 30 minutes, and I ran it through, Describe to get a decent transcript from it. Took very little time, but I built a lot of, I built credibility and open doors, and so
whoa, that's like incredible, because I just got to stop you, because what I love about that is, so the easiest thing we can do is, send an article or things that make us think of them. Rarely have I ever heard of someone going the extra mile and saying, I'm actually going to send you something that I know is targeted to you because it is born out of your material. That is brilliant. Sean's brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay. That's it. We're done.
It's an idea that I got from the James Altucher show. He puts out a business podcast.
Love him.
Yes. And so he talks about sending ideas, and helping, so his little thing is, and I don't have mine with me, but I actually adopted it. He has this 10 idea a day thing where you would use waiter's pads. Well, I ordered waiter's pads as well because I use it. And so I use it when I write. God, love the texture of the hard stock to it. So I'll go on walks and I'll write or I'll generate ideas that way. But that's a core component that he would preach to his audience of provide value, provide ideas. If you come up with 10 ideas, don't just think about them for yourself. Think about the people that you want to reach. And so that's another level where you can take someone from a 2 and now take them to a 5 where they're like
immediately.
Exactly. Where they're like, okay, Sean, I'm interested in this type of project. Can you help me with it? Can you quote me on it? And so now you're at that 5 level where you can put together that quote.
God, that's brilliant. So for people who don't know James Altucher, he wrote a book a few years ago. It was actually, it's called Choose Yourself. Mm-hmm. It's the first book I wrote. It's the first book I read when I was going to start consulting. I had just been laid off. I don't know if you know my story, Sean, but I was collecting. Okay, I was collecting what I like to call an unofficial PhD in getting laid off. I was a real pro. And so, I mean, I always joke, if anyone needs help getting laid off, just come talk to me. I'll tell you what to say. So I just was not, it's not my personality. I'm cut out to be an entrepreneur. I'm cut out to be a leader. I'm cut out to be an advisor. And so I had been laid off and I said, Laura, you can either go and get another full-time job, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting a different result, or you can do what you've been thinking about and dreaming of and all this stuff. And so that's when I started my consultancy. I read Choose Yourself.
Awesome.
That book changed my perception of myself and how to do business. I haven't looked at his stuff in a while, but it was so helpful to me. And one thing I did, Sean, okay, and people used to know me for this. I haven't done it recently since we haven't been out as much in this pandemic, but I would go to the bank and I would get $2 bills. Do you remember him talking about this?
Yes.
I would go to the bank and I would have them special.
People remember you.
People remember you. And my friends thought I was a nut job. I'd be like, give me $500 in $2 bills. And I would have this stack of $2 bills. And I'd carry a little bit in my, pocket. If I was at a restaurant, if I was anything where, we're exchanging for gratuity or whatever, people will never forget you if you give them a $2 bill. It was one of his little things. And that in the notepad or the restaurant pad. Brilliant guy. Love it.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Okay,
I had no idea about that connection. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. People have given you permission to market. For the people who haven't given you permission to market, let's say you send them an email and they don't respond. What do you do with them? Do you say, I'm going to try one more time? Do you let it go? What happens to those people?
Sure. So a lot of times what I'll do is say once a quarter, every 3 months. If I'm not getting a no, and I've got a pretty good idea that they are a fit, but they haven't responded, I'll send the same message. I will. And I'm telling you, it is as crazy as anything, but because we tend to think in our own heads where we go, oh my gosh, they are going to remember that message, but
they don't remember.
No, 99 out of 100 times, they are not going to remember that message. And I'll have people, 4 quarters later respond. Actually, we have a need for this. I'm like, cool. And I see it not only with my company, but as I coach entrepreneurs through that and their sales reps, as they build that system, they think that through. it's recirculating the water in the fountain,
Yep.
You're doing that until they say yes or no. And no is
Yeah.
great because you can prune your list. And
Yeah.
I think that's the unlock, is so many people are so afraid of hearing no, or this didn't happen, no is awesome because they disqualified themselves.
Yes. And that's okay. We don't want to market to people who don't want our stuff.
No.
It's just not right now, or whatever. It may be right in the future.
Yeah.
It's so interesting you talk about this. And part of the reason I asked, so we got connected on this cold outreach issue, as I was mentioning earlier, because I got this very poorly targeted message about Brave by Design, about a prospective guest. And I'm ranting about it on LinkedIn. I don't respond to the email. I'm not going to spend time on it.
Should. Yeah.
Until they followed up with me.
Oh.
And they said, Laura, we haven't heard from you about this terrible. Yeah, they followed up. We haven't heard from you. Why haven't you responded? And then I responded. So, and I don't want to say it was a rude response, but it was definitely, I'm not your target market. If you had looked at my show, you would know that. Please do not contact me again. So I just want to say that, because if you're targeting correctly, if you understand who your target market is, this is for the listeners, you understand who your target market is, you understand who you serve, you should not be sending emails like that. You most likely are not. But if you don't understand your market, if you don't understand who you serve, those foundational pieces, you run the risk of doing what they did, which is really just spraying messages to people, hoping someone responds. And it can kind of piss people off, I think.
Let's go back to that word empathy that we talked about at the beginning.
Yes.
Because what they did not understand is they circled back with you with the sense that they were entitled to your response. And to me, if someone doesn't respond to a message that I put out, that's not the recipient's fault. That's on me. I have not given them sufficient reason for them to respond. So what that mindset does is it keeps me from taking it personally. And the way that they responded to you, and I feel you, because I get those messages all the time, the third time, and they're really upping the ante, like I'm just this evil person because I didn't respond to them. It's like, no, it's on you. It's on me. If I want somebody to respond, it is on me. I need to adjust my message. I need to do things that will help connect what I want to help them get what they want. And if I don't have that connection and I don't have the empathy to figure out why would they want to reply? What, from their perspective, why would you want to reply to them? They didn't make that case.
Right. That's such a good point. And I've heard you, by the way, for everyone who's listening to this, if you're not already following Sean on LinkedIn, I don't know what you're doing, because one of the things I really love about your posts, and you mentioned this, I've seen you mention it a few times, is we as entrepreneurs, we have to be responsible to ourselves. And and one of the things you've mentioned a few times, which I really appreciate, is that if you lose a proposal, if you lose a bid, if something doesn't work out the way you want, a lot of people will blame the prospective client. Or the current client, instead of taking responsibility and saying, what could I have done in that situation to affect the outcome differently? Because if we just blame other people, we don't learn a thing. No, I mean, there are tricky people in the world. Okay.
Absolutely.
But you're the common denominator in your life. So you've got to work on yourself first. rather than just blaming everyone. And I really appreciate
Thank
that
you.
perspective from you.
Thank you.
So, Sean, this has been so much fun.
I know it's been a
I've really
blast.
enjoyed it. For people who are interested to learn more about you, what do we tell them? Where do we send them?
Sure. Yeah. Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn at Sean M as in Matthew Lyden. And then also my blog, which is strategyandstorytelling.com. You spell it all out, including the AND for the and, strategyandstorytelling.com.
Awesome. Sean, thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
so
me for
much,
this
Laura.
creative
I
conversation.
appreciate it.